Welcome back. It's nice to be with you as we explore a integration practice that links with the video about Jesus saying, take up your cross, stauron auto, your cross to follow me. I'm going to be using the cross as a symbol of our integration and the move between the alpha beginning of our life and the omega point at which our life just vanishes into the center of the cross. I look forward to sharing this with you. So the cross is a universal symbol, and it's used, in fact, predates Christianity, but it is a very powerful symbol. It has been used very negatively in crusading, and it has all sorts of connotations, very emotive symbol. But Carl Jung uses it as a symbol of integration. And I'm going to take you through a consideration of your life and my life as we look at where we begin and where we end, and how the cross can be a very useful map of our integration, our expansion, and then our contraction. So let's begin by noticing that our bodies actually are cruciform. And if you look at the silhouette of the person standing there, you'll see that there is a sense of us being the cross. Now, we come into being, we begin, and I want you to imagine this moment that there was, at a certain time, for each of us, one cell. It was a fertile egg that had been ovulated, and it was inside our mothers. And then a sperm cell from our fathers penetrated and fertilized that egg. And in that moment, with that single cell, our life began. That cell then divided and divided and divided, became an embryo, became a fetus, became a baby in the womb, and about 9 months after conception, we had the second alpha point, the second beginning point, where we emerged from our mothers, and the very first thing we did was breathed in. That first inhalation is the second alpha point, and that marks the beginning of a tide that has been with us ever since, and it is the proof of us being alive, the fact that we breathe. Even now, we might not be aware of it, and I invite you just to notice that you are breathing. There's an in-breath, a pause, an out-breath, a pause, an in-breath. And so that is the tide of our life, reminding us that we are alive, and eventually, at the end of our life, there will be a moment when that breath completes and there is a final out-breath. But everything in between is life. So we begin with a singular cell, and we are born, and we take that first breath. And the first half of our life, the cross symbolizes an expansion of ourselves as we grow into establishing our ego identity. There's a lot of mistaken thinking around the ego, that we shouldn't have egos. We absolutely need egos. People who don't develop their egos in the first half of life, people who've got fragile egos or broken egos for whatever bad things happen to them, on people who struggle with mental health problems. They break, they are schizoid, all those diseases of the mind, illnesses of the mind, happen when the ego isn't able to expand. So we begin the expansion and the growth of the ego as a healthy process, as the cross expands. And so we reach up into heaven, the vertical axis from the head going up, symbolizes how we reach up into heaven, we ascend, we have great dreams of transcendence, we have visions, and we are told to dream big and think big. And the great myth that describes that, of course, is Icarus. And please note in the myth that it's the parents who build Icarus his wings of wax and feathers and say to him, fly to the sun. And so that's the vertical axis going upwards. But for every movement in one direction, of course, to balance it, there's a move in the other direction. And so if you looked at the feet, there's also, as we ascend into heaven and begin to grow into this life and to experience who we are, we also sink down into the darkness and the fears of Hades. The underworld. It is this immersion into darkness and a realization that that life can be scary. And part of becoming who we are is a very frightening process. Will we be accepted? We get rejected. We get bullied. We get thrown out, and people don't respond to us well. That takes us into dark places of fear. And the myth of Persephone, who has to every year go back to Hades to renew the fertility of the earth, is a very powerful symbol there. Then, looking to the right side, we see that in Latin the word right is dexter, and it's where we get the word dexterity from, or competence. And our right side symbolizes, that expansion symbolizes all the education and the qualification and the gathering of skills for us to become positive people, and we have this curated self-image that we present to the world of our positivity and what is the hero image. And it fascinates me when we greet each other in the days we were still allowed to shake hands, we turn our right side and we extend our hand to greet a person, to shake their hand. And we show them the right side. Can you see the right side shaking hands? But of course, as you present the right side, you're hiding the left side. And the left side, the left hand, left in Latin is sinister. And we, of course, got that word directly from the sinister side. The devil's hand, it used to be called. And so part of, as we expand our competence and we become confident in our right-hand side of the cross, that is us expanding our ego, we also learn that we can be very destructive, and we learn that we have a shadow side, and we learn that we are able of terribly negative things, and for every bit as we can be a hero, we can also be a villain. So I want to pause just for a moment and ask you to notice who you are and how the cross of your ego is at this very moment. How in the first half of life you dreamt your dreams, you developed your fears of the dark, you became competent on the right, you recognized your dark side on the left, the sinister part of you. And that is the first half of our life. However, what happens next is when we move into the second half of life, the arrows on the cross turn around. And you get to a place in your life, such as where I am now, where I have less life left than I have lived. I am now moving to the omega point. It was brought home very really to me in May this year, when I had the privilege of being present with my 90-year-old mom in the moment that she breathed her last breath. And she was gone. She had witnessed my first in-breath. And now I was witnessing her last out-breath. And so as we're moving towards that point, the omega point, the point at which our life will be completely contracted again back to that single cell that it began from. We will go back to a single point and then we'll be gone. I'm old enough to remember those very early computer monitors, the green ones. Remember, when you switched them off, there'd be a static noise and then a single little bright green light in the center of the screen. Just one pixel would illuminate and be bright and then just fade away. That's the Omega point. That's the point that every one of us is heading towards. And if we are skillful and if we are blessed, we can use these 4 directions of the cross to bring us to that intersection where everything belongs and everything is integrated. So let's look at those 4 cardinal compass points in reverse now. As we age, we begin to move down from these dreams of heaven and ascension and transcendence back to the I am, to the core. We no longer dream the big dreams. We no longer try to change the world. In fact, we're quite happy to let the world change us. There's a diminishing of that expansion, that ego expansion. It now becomes ego integration. Similarly, we also are not so afraid of the dark and the underworld anymore. We have been into the labyrinth. And we have faced the Minotaur, that beast that lived in the labyrinth under King Minos's castle in the Greek myth. We have faced our demons, and we have tamed them, and we have allowed our dragons to come out of their lairs and their dungeons, and they have become our pets, and they lie at our feet, and they sleep, and when they get restless, we just pat them, and they... So those, what the Germans call the Sturm and Drang, that fire, the demonic, is calmed down, and the dragons are domesticated as we come out of the hells of our life, and we bring that also into the center point. On the right, all our professional qualifications and who we are and our dexterity and the name on the door and the name on the business letterhead, and this is who I am this, also diminishes. We are now, many of us, retired. We are no longer suffering the illusion that we are somehow indispensable. My late mother used to say the graveyard is full of indispensable people. So we have the contraction of our competence. Our bodies themselves begin to not be able to do. Our minds not able to do. We're not so dexterous as we were. And similarly, from the left side, we have made peace with our shadow. We had made peace with the fact that we can be hurtful, hateful people, and it's okay. As one great teacher put it, it's okay that I'm not okay. And so we bring all of these things together to that central point. And again, I ask you just to pause. and as you reflect on the cross, perhaps you'd like to take a piece of paper and draw a cross, and then just list the things that you sense are diminishing in your life, from the top and the bottom, the right and the left, and it all moves to that core center point where all these things are now fallen away. I am this, I am that, I have this dream, I'm going to do that, I'm afraid of this, I have this shadow, I have this competence, and all gets back to a single point of I am. And the I am is in the great I am. And when this has all gone, at the Omega point, I will simply merge back into life and back into the earth, and I will be done. Just like this integration talk is done. So thank you very much for your attention. Look forward to being with you soon.